the question is that by killing its past and its present and good big sections of their past and present, universities are killing also their future. And University of Sheffield is a classic case of this situation. And why are they doing this? Is it bad management? Is it lack of vision? Or is it just a political plan to do so? I think that would take us very far, but one consideration that is important to make is that the fact that some of these subjects are becoming less and less available is making the university far more elitist, because only some restricted and privileged university will offer these subjects. And I think more and more the concept that normal working class people are only entitled to attend courses which are by the political establishment regarded as useful, okay, or practically useful for their purposes. They won't have, they will only have access to these courses. So courses like archaeology, philosophy, language, classics, history, and so on and so forth, run the risk of being only for what the political class considers to be the elite.
Zooarchaeology Lab, Sheffield, alive and kicking, protecting Sheffield Zooarchaeology laboratories, an international resource at risk. Why it matters. Sheffield, international renowned in zooarchaeology for 40 plus years, 2,000 plus skeletal specimens, research and teaching collections used by students and researchers worldwide. What's happened? The management forced a hasty and ill-conceived move from our purpose-built Ella Armitage laboratories to a new location wholly unsuited to housing an international reference collection. Before, Ella Armitage building. After, current facilities, Edwardian floor. Before, purpose-built labs. After, cramped rooms, reduced space and no space for hands-on teaching. Before, 2,000 plus specimens accessible. After, 1/3 of collection in storage. Before, disabled access plus climate control. After, no proper disabled access. Before, optimum working conditions. After, no natural light and potential asbestos. We had purpose-built teaching and lab spaces where we could carry out our teaching and research activities. But now there's no space for hands-on teaching and rooms are too small, even for small group activities. Before, we housed more than 2,000 skeletal specimens, complete and partial skeletons of a wide variety of European mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians and fish. After, there's a lack of space and at least 1/3 of the collection is on indefinite loan. Before, we had multiple specimens of the same species to show sexual dimorphism and intraspecies variation. After, the imposed rationalization meant a significant reduction in the number of species we could host. Before, professional rolling racks saved a lot of space and allowed easy access to our specimens. After, flimsy freestanding shelving cannot safely or adequately hold the weight of the collection. Before, our lab was fully accessible by disabled people. It had a lift and a stair lift installed. After, no disabled access. There is only a lifting platform not wide enough for a standard wheelchair. Before, we had safe spaces with plenty of working space and natural light. After, we have no windows, high likelihood of asbestos contamination, and walls exposed in some rooms. Before, our lab hosted a big international and very active zooarchaeology research team. After, we now only have a few members left. since the climate of uncertainty has prompted many to leave. Our collections remain boxed and will be unavailable for months. Students and researchers are cut off from vital resources. We will continue to do all we can to ensure this collection remains accessible to current and future generations. Above all, we will speak out publicly and firmly against the mismanagement and disregard that threatens its future. These collections represent decades of research, learning, and community engagement, and they deserve better. We deserve better. Please help us bringing this outrageous decision to the public attention. Like, comment, share.
Hello and welcome to the Watching Brief. What you've just been watching is a video that was published on YouTube and other social media by the Sheffield University Zooarchaeology Lab. Those of you that have been following Watching Brief for a while will know that we've been talking to the team at Sheffield over a number of years now, as the archaeology department and archaeology as a subject has been slowly downgraded and faced a series of controversies, culminating most recently in a round of redundancies and the forced move of the Zooarchaeology Lab, which you have just seen the lab's own reaction to. We thought it would be a useful exercise if we talk to somebody who's at the centre and has been at the centre of the controversies about archaeology at Sheffield for as long as we've been covering the story, and that's a friend of the Watching Brief, Professor Umberto Albarella. And I spoke to Professor Umberto a short while ago. This is the conversation we recorded. Hello, and as you can see, we are joined for this Watching Brief by an old friend of the show, Professor Umberto Albarella of Sheffield University. Unfortunately, as people who've been following the Watching Brief for a while will know that when Umberto joins us, it's usually because something concerning's happened at Sheffield, and I'm afraid that this week's chat is prompted by just that. We're responding to a post that was put by the Sheffield Zooarchaeology Lab on Facebook earlier this week, which made a number of comments and indeed accusations about the way that the Zooarchaeology Lab and its reference collection, which is of international standard, has been treated by the university authorities. And so we felt that it was important that this got more a wider distribution, and so we invited Umberto onto the show again. So first of all, Umberto, thank you for taking time out to join us this morning.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here, and thanks, Marc. Thanks, Andy. Always good to see you.
Thank you. I mean, I'll cut to the chase. For people that aren't familiar with the story, Sheffield University had a world-famous archaeology department until a couple of years ago. Then the university authorities chose to basically downgrade the subject, remove its departmental status, and spread its remaining archaeology provision across other schools within the university. It was at that point that we met Umberto and began to talk to his colleagues and indeed students at the university. We followed this story really since it started. This year is the first year that the full rejigged, shall we say, archaeology at Sheffield came into being. We spoke to Umberto recently about that, and also about the proposed changes to the Zooarchaeology labs. Sheffield has an international reputation for zooarchaeology, and in fact has trained many zooarchaeologists who now work all over the world. So this was obviously concerning, and and now we are where we are. So, Umberto, can you just fill me in on and fill our viewers in on what has actually happened to, particularly your provision, your lab provision, and the reference collection? Obviously, in a subject like zooarchaeology, a reference collection is absolutely vital to the functioning of a department.
Yes, absolutely. No good and serious zooarchaeology laboratory will not have a reference collection. Our reference collection is very special for two reasons. It is a historical collection, very rich, and even people before me who have been really pioneers in archaeology contribute to create it. And also one element that we have very strongly emphasized, especially since I got to Sheffield in the last couple of decades, was that it was, and well, yeah, I should use the past probably, was a collection that we wanted to make it as accessible as possible to students and the community. So it's very well-known collection and very admired and appreciated worldwide, but also locally. So anyway, so what has happened is that we were forced to move from the building where we were until a few months ago. And, we have moved before. The moving itself is not the problem, but basically we have been dumped, and I have really no other word to use. We have been dumped into totally inappropriate facilities. There isn't enough space. They're not sufficiently accessible. There's no proper disabled access. And there are no windows. And it's just from a place that could potentially be admired and contributed to the good reputation of the University of Sheffield. We have ended up in a place where access is difficult. Also, it doesn't look good at all. And as a consequence of that, also we had to give on what I hope is only temporary loan, but certainly on loan about 1/3 of our collection.
Just to finish some of the background to that, the zooarchaeology element of Sheffield's courses, and again, I should say we're talking about here a reputation that's been built up over half a century, in fact, since Sheffield first started.
Absolutely, and more.
Since Sheffield first started to offer archaeology. You were in a purpose-built laboratory called the Ella Armitage Laboratories. What has replaced you in the Ella Armitage?
We absolutely have no idea. I think that is part of the problem. That just to give you an example, a different location had been proposed to us originally. We thought that new location was okay. So at some point in Rash, they were planning to move us there. And then at some point they said, no, you're not going to move there anymore. And then they said, okay, no, you are going to stay where you are, indefinitely, or we are not too sure, but probably you're going to stay where you are. And then suddenly another move said, no, you are going to move, but you're not going to move where we had originally planned. You're going to move to a new place. Why we have to move? What is going to happen to the building where we are? Why we can go to the place where we were originally planned to go? All this, we absolutely have no idea. And despite asking several times, and that is one of the key problems, is that the communication is poor, but also there is an attitude that basically seems to imply you just do what you're told, and there is absolutely no need to involve you in any form of discussion. That's not the kind of university I used to know.
And people who followed this story will recognize some of the things you've said from previous conversations we've had, including the conversations around the removal and of the departmental status from archaeology, and moving forward from that. And again, to give people an idea of the size of the issue that you were facing, you and your colleagues were facing. We're not talking about the kind of thing you can put into an overnight bag and move quickly. How many items does the reference collection comprise, roughly?
Well, to be honest with you, I can't remember off the top of my head, but we are talking about thousands of skeletons of modern animals that we use to compare with archaeological material. So yeah, it was quite. We used to have one teaching lab and one research lab, and of reasonable size in terms of space. But the question is that also the material was organized in a very kind of efficient and extremely well planned way. And when we were forced to move, for instance, we couldn't take with us the racks, the rolling racks, which were absolutely essential for the material that we have. And everything was absolutely rushed. And as you said, we're not talking about just putting everything in a bag and move. It's quite a large amount of material that had to be moved.
And I mean, when we were preparing for this interview, you were telling me that although obviously there was dialogue of a sort, even if it was telling you this is going to happen when, and then changing the mind, and something else was going to happen. But you said the actual move was planned in under 2 months, planned and executed in under 2 months.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, and it is again something we complained about. We just said, okay, this is very rushed, and I know that many people were extremely stressed about the situation. And to be honest with you, some of our technicians were really bullied into submission. Just do what you are supposed to do without complaining or raising issues. It was an absolutely hostile, awful kind of environment in which we had to operate. And then, of course, I resisted this because I just said, okay, I understand change is part of our life. I accepted that a change may occur, but a change has got to happen according to a strategy. And I feel that we should have been part of this strategy. So, I mean, we were also threatened and treated as not academics with whom it's worth having a conversation, but like soldiers in an army that should just obey order and shut up.
Now, I should say that I would, if we had a representative of the university here, I'm sure they would deny those accusations. Having said that, we have put a series of questions to the press office at Sheffield University. We've not yet received any reply, and the questions are based on the extensive post that the Zooarchaeology Lab placed on social media, including on Facebook, and we'll link to that below the line. Among the things that you say, the new space that you're in, you mentioned earlier, you say it has no windows, no natural light, no climate control, which obviously if you're dealing with trying to stabilize sometimes sensitive cultural artifacts, skeletal remains and so on, it is a potential problem. And it also has no disabled access, which on the face of it, the university could be in breach of its responsibilities under the Disability Discrimination Act. And also you suggest that there may be asbestos contamination in the building. Did you see, or were you given access to any risk assessments as part of this move?
No, we weren't. And I specifically asked whether, because of the question on the asbestos, which by the way is yesterday news, I received an email from the management of the school because some of the people working with me had raised concerns about this asbestos issue. And yesterday I received an email from the management of school claiming that there is no asbestos issue. However, the question of the asbestos had been raised by them, not by us. Okay, so on what basis they are saying there is no asbestos issue? And I specifically asked the head of the school reassurance about that. And then he said, this can only be provided through a survey of the situation that is going to establish, the asbestos content. And I asked why this survey has not been carried out, and I couldn't get an answer to that.
I mean, it strikes me, and please tell me if this is not a correct characterization, but it strikes me you've moved from a purpose-built laboratory to basically something that cannot be described in any sense as a working professional university laboratory.
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
Why do you think the university's done this? Because, I mean, broadening the discussion out a little bit, you would think this could be self-defeating. I mean, in fact, you allude to, the lab alludes to in the post that you've been generously funded, for example, by the UK Research Institute for some of your work. So doesn't this put potential future funding at risk? Does it not also put your potential to attract students, and particularly now MAs and PhDs, now that you have no undergraduates at Sheffield because of the previous cuts?
Oh, of course, it does all of that, and we have raised this issue many, many times. I think this is an awkward one, Andy, because I think we have to separate the two issues. One is the evidence. Okay, what is the evidence that we have? And the evidence is that basically the university management in the last few years has been doing a lot, all they could, to damage us as archaeologists, as the field of archaeology, our teaching, our research. And we have we carried on attracting external grants. Even the lab now is supported by grant from an HRC funded network called Riches, okay, which is very prestigious, very well known nationally. Okay, so I mean, it's we have carried on being active, and we are just carry on doing so and try all we can to remain active. But certainly the evidence is that they've done all they could to put obstacles to our activities. Now, the other question is why, coming back to your question, why are they doing that? Now, in a way, I could say that we are going to be in the realm of speculations on the why. But I am an academic, I'm a researcher, and when I research, I don't just accumulate data, also try to interpret them. And I think in this case, I think at some degree interpretation is needed. And unfortunately, it's impossible not to see this in the broader context of basically the political situation in the country and the way universities are being interpreted. There's clearly a tendency towards making the university smaller, less powerful, and basically subjected to political will. This is the broader context. In the more specific context of the university, is it's hard not to see that there are some forms of personal vendettas going on here, because clearly we have been very much at the forefront of our fight to save the department and to expose all the malpractice of the university. And it's hard not to see this as a retribution. Of course, this is an interpretation. People might say that we are being paranoid, we are speculating about this, but it's not nice for me to say that. But it's very hard not to interpret the evidence in any other way. And just to clarify, when I say personal vendetta, I don't mean one specific individual against another individual. It's just the broader management of the university obviously sees us as troublemakers, and just because we try to work in the interest of the university and be totally open and transparent about what we think.
Just for context, I should tell our viewers that a couple of days ago, at the time of recording, and we're recording this at the end of September, 2025, the University College Union, your professional union for staff at Sheffield, has just balloted for further industrial action in an ongoing dispute. Has it not?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the vote for strike action, whether we are past the threshold that is required by the law, will be known in the next few days. And this action is just part of that same context I was alluding to. I mean, strictly speaking, the action is supposed to protect our salaries and the current conditions of work. But to be honest with you, I think the overall question is people, staff and students of the university are just absolutely fed up to see their universities mistreated in such an absolutely appalling way. And there is a great desire to respond to this. Of course, the broader context is very, very difficult. Many people are just totally depressed about the situation, and I think that is the problem that we have. Is that are people just responding just by saying, "I don't want to have anything to do with this. I'm just getting away from it," or are they trying to respond in a kind of more proactive way? And this is what I'm trying to do, but believe me, it's hard.
To widen it out again, recently we saw a report, I think it was from the British Academy, that was talking about university courses and was pointing out that effectively what it described, I think, as black holes were appearing in provision around the country. That certain subjects were becoming unavailable, particularly to students who were looking to go to higher education more locally than going to one of the traditional, Russell Group universities. Though you are a Russell Group university at Sheffield, I think, aren't you? But the idea that is that university managements are taking for local reasons. They would argue for reasons of efficient management and cost efficiency in a challenging climate, but they're taking what are effectively strategic decisions about the provision of various subjects. We've been saying for some time on the watching brief that archaeology seems to be particularly affected by this. Obviously, you lost departmental status in your undergraduates. The course at Worcester went completely. The course at Hull has gone. First of all, how do you respond to that climate? And have you seen any signs of any concern from the wider archaeological world, particularly bodies like the Council of British Archaeology, the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists, and other groups who you are also connected with, you and your students will be members of and supporters of?
Yes, I think your analysis is correct that obviously archaeology is under threat. No, I haven't seen much reaction from the formal bodies that are supposed to represent us. I don't know why. I'm not sure I even want to get there. That's the problem between themselves and their conscience. I have enough problems with my university and with the broader situation. Yes, absolutely. Many disciplines are under threat, are disappearing. I don't buy at all the issue that this is for financial saving. Because well, first of all, in many cases, our unions and other experts have demonstrated the fact that the university is not saving any money by acting in this way. Second, why are universities carrying on squandering money in all possible directions, if they are really seriously concerned about their finances. The question is that by killing its past and its present and good big sections of their past and present, universities are killing also their future. And University of Sheffield is a classic case of this situation. And why are they doing this? Is it bad management? Is it lack of vision? Or is it just a political plan to do so? I think that would take us very far, but one consideration that is important to make is that the fact that some of these subjects are becoming less and less available is making the university far more elitist, because only some restricted and privileged university will offer these subjects. And I think more and more the concept that normal working class people are only entitled to attend courses which are by the political establishment regarded as useful, okay, or practically useful for their purposes. They won't have, they will only have access to these courses. So courses like archaeology, philosophy, language, classics, history, and so on and so forth run the risk of being only for what the political class considers to be the elite.
And it's certainly the case, and you've drawn attention to it before, that in your case in Zooarchaeology at Sheffield, you used to run community-based courses for local people and non-traditional entries to HE, and those were one of the first things I think that went in the current round of cuts. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We were forbidden to organize them anymore, which actually created an absolutely international public outcry, because our courses were extremely well known. And actually, we were also making money, some money. Well, obviously, our main purpose was not to make money. Also, because I will have to remind the people who are listening to us that the universities are registered charities, and therefore it's against the law for them to work for profit. Okay, although obviously that doesn't mean they shouldn't have some prudent financial management.
Why should people in the wider archaeology sector care, and what should they do as a response to this?
It's a big question in the sense that it has lost a lot, and it's very difficult to sum it up in a few seconds, but I'll do my best. I mean, Sheffield, and not just as a university, as a city, has been for many years known for its archaeology, okay? And so for its archaeological research and teaching, I mean. And so, I mean, this is a massive damage to the reputation, not just of the university or the city as a whole. Okay, it's not just so that the department doesn't exist anymore. It's just so that the way we have been dispersed and our teaching has been very seriously damaged, and many of our activities have been, to be honest with you, boycotted by the university management. I mean, it just gives a sense that Sheffield as a city doesn't have the courage to become a real cultural place, open to everybody, that is prepared to give its working class a chance, to become involved with an understanding of its past and its culture. All these ambitions are just not there. And I think this is absolutely hugely damaging for the city, it's damaging for the university, and also damaging for the discipline as a whole, because if the discipline becomes confined to an opportunity for just selected groups, I think it's a betrayal of what archaeology should be.
And we spoke previously about what response, if any, you'd had from bodies in UK archaeology. People watching this, what would you ask them to do? You know, people who are on social media who've read the post from the Zooarchaeology Lab that prompted this discussion, who've listened to this discussion, who are feeling that this is something they need to comment on, to get involved with. What would you like them to do?
I will start from my personal experience. I have now been a professor for a few years. I could have made my life far easier than it is just by ignoring these issues and just following the flow. You know, it's just say, okay, here's how it is. I'll just shut up and just get on with it. Why am I not doing it? Why am I making my life a misery, to be honest with you? It's just because when things of this at this scale happen, when you see that the culture and the education of your country and the world is under threat, you need to respond. So, answering your question, what I would like people to do is to say, I mean, sometimes we live in a rather depressing environment, and but in a way, the easier option is just to say, "Oh, I don't want to hear about that." Okay, but the more difficult option, but also is the option that eventually makes you feel better because you feel your integrity and your sense of justice is still there. Is just say, "Okay, I want to raise these issues. I want to fight against the injustice. I wanted to fight for what is good, what I thought it was good about my discipline, my culture, my education, and I want to try to defend it." And there are many, many different ways in which people can do it. Through conversations, through exposure on the media, through participation in any form of protest and also organization. Basically, in the past, we used to a term that is maybe now a little bit out of fashion. People need to be mobilized. I think it's time for people to mobilize again, because otherwise things are only going to get worse and worse. I mean, to be honest with you, in a way, I think my relationship with the media, including with you guys, in many respects, I could have done without it. If the university and the various institutions we operate with would be prepared to act in a decent way, sit down, discuss problems, and try to solve them. Okay, you have to exhaust that possibility first. Amicable compromise. Okay. Uh, if that doesn't work, I'm afraid that you have to go public and you have to involve the community, because universities belong to the community. The whole culture and education belongs to the community. It just doesn't belong to a few top managers with a very kind of corporate mentality.
And I think that's probably a good comment to end this particular part of our discussion on. Professor Umberto Albarella, thank you very much. Two things really just to finish this section of the watching brief. As I said earlier, we have approached Sheffield University's press office for comment on the issues that we've been discussing in the course of this interview, and were published on social media. We've not yet received a response. If we do receive a response, we'll either make an addendum to this particular watching brief, and we'll certainly publish them below the line in the notes. The other thing, Umberto, before I let you go, on another matter, just last week, we published the story about the allegations that the president of the European Association of Archaeologists had, at the very least, been complicit, if not driving an effort to overturn the executive board of the EAA's decision to ask Israeli delegates to the recent virtual meeting in Belgrade to appear as individuals without their corporate and university and government body affiliations, which was seen as very mild, the mildest of rebukes to what the Israeli government is doing in Gaza and allowing on the West Bank in the occupied territories. You were very outspoken on social media about that. And in fact, you said that you were going to resign your membership of the EAA, European
I
Association of
have,
Archaeologists.
I have.
That was my first question. Have you actually carried out that
Yes,
intention?
yes.
And 1 week on, in the light of our story and the other discussions that have been going on, how do you what kind of a place do you feel the EAA is in at the moment?
Not a good one. But again, going back to the discussion we were having before, I think it's very important that the people respond and do try to do something constructively. I'll be very happy to become a member of the EA again. I have been a member for decades, and it's very sad for me to have to get out. I think, in a way, similar issues in a very different context. Um, we don't all have to agree about how we do things, and we are not always going to agree. Um, I think obviously the context in which we are operating here is absolutely appalling, because it's the context of a whole genocide of a population and how we respond to that. But I think the question is that what has been appalling about what has happened with the EAA has been the lack of openness and transparency. Okay, so I think for people to disagree about what a certain body does is perfectly fine, but you just draw the conclusions and act accordingly. I mean, I have been part of organizations. I mean, even only a couple of years ago, I was chair of a political organization that took a decision that I found unacceptable. As chair of that board, I resigned. This is what I did, because I couldn't own a decision that I didn't think was acceptable. And when will you start all these underhand strategies and tactics? You give up open conversation, and I mean, things are only going to get very bad. And this is what has happened with EAA. Obviously, we hope that there will be a possibility for people to get together again and act in a transparent way. I mean, if the decisions that the board or whoever is going to take are unacceptable for some, it will be okay for people just to say, I don't want to have anything to do with this organization, but at least it will be there out in the open, and it will be clear about what has happened. But if even us, as researchers, people involved in culture, academics, are not prepared to provide that level of transparency, then our whole world is going to collapse completely. So was one my main problem with the EAA. But I just hope that eventually this emergency meeting that has been called is going to happen, and maybe it's going to readdress some of these issues. But when this really muddy, not particularly straightforward things happen, people need to respond. And I'm glad that some people have responded.
And I think that's probably a point to finish. The call in for the voting on the call in for the extraordinary meeting of the EAA, I think, ends on the 30th of September, and we should know very shortly after that how the EAA management is going to proceed with this issue, and we'll be continuing to cover it on the Watching Brief. For now, Professor Umberto Albarella of Sheffield University, thank you very much for taking time out to talk to us this morning.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you as ever for having me. Cheers.
Well, that was a happy experience, wasn't it? Anyone who's been following the Watching Brief for any length of time knows that a lot of our coverage is of comms going wrong in archaeology and heritage. It's decisions being made without accountability. It's decisions being made, policies being laid down without engagement with the people whose lives and careers they most impact on. And I think one of the lessons of what we've just heard is that if you don't speak up, if you don't have the conversation, as Professor Umberto Albarella said, if you run out of possibilities within your organisation, if you can't find that compromise, if they won't even talk to you, then you have to take it public. And I think we all owe a debt of gratitude to Professor Albarella and his colleagues who've taken the story of archaeology in Sheffield very public over the last few years. And I think, as we can probably say now, at no little cost to themselves, certainly in terms of their mental health and well-being. The stress of people working in that situation can only be imagined if you're not there in that place with them. Well, that's it for the Watching Brief this time. If you can like, share and subscribe to the Watching Brief on YouTube, that will be a really good thing for us. You will help us defeat the algorithm and get quality news, investigations and stories about archaeology out there into the social media sphere, into the public sphere, and defeat the algorithm. And on that subject, if you can bear to visit the Archaeosoup Patreon offer, you can subscribe to Archaeosoup on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. And if you can buy us on the pipeline a Ko-fi from time to time, that will be really appreciated too. That means we could bring you more stories and more interviews of the kind that you've just watched. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.